What happens when the richest man in the world moves into the most boring neighborhood on earth and the HOA tries to fine him? He doesn't fight back. He doesn't leave. He does something far worse. He buys everything. Welcome back to HOA Backdoor Stories, the channel where the real drama lives behind closed doors. Today's story is about a billionaire who moves into a normal neighborhood and the HOA tries to destroy him. Big mistake. Drop your city in the comments right now. Let's see where the family is watching from. Let's get into it. The morning Marcus Reed's moving trucks rolled into Maplewood Estates, nobody knew his name. That was about to change forever. It was a Tuesday, the kind of quiet, unremarkable Tuesday where the biggest drama in the neighborhood was whether old Mr. Patterson had trimmed his hedges to the HOA-approved height of exactly 14 inches. Karen Mitchell, HOA president for 11 consecutive years, was already outside at 7:45 a.m. with her clipboard, her measuring tape, and the specific expression she reserved for people who parked 2 inches over the line. She was a woman who had built her entire identity on one simple belief, that rules were the only thing separating civilization from chaos. And in Maplewood Estates, she was civilization. 3 enormous black trucks turned onto Elmwood Drive, and Karen's eyes narrowed before they even stopped moving. The trucks were too big, they were too loud, and within 30 seconds it was clear that whoever was moving in had absolutely no intention of following the HOA's Moving Day Protocol, a 4-page document Karen had personally written, laminated, and mailed to every resident twice a year. The first truck stopped directly in front of 12 Elmwood Drive, a house that had been empty for 8 months, and immediately blocked 2 driveways, a fire hydrant, and the corner of Diane Reeves' beloved rose garden that had won the Neighborhood Beautification Award 3 years running. Karen walked across the street like a woman marching to war. The movers were enormous, professional, and completely unbothered. She pushed past them toward the man standing in the driveway, looking up at the house with his hands in his pockets like he was studying a painting in a museum. He was tall, maybe early 40s, wearing a plain white t-shirt and dark jeans. No watch she could see, but his shoes probably cost more than her refrigerator. He turned when he heard her heels clicking on the pavement, and he smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an apologetic smile, the smile of someone who had never once in his life been genuinely worried about anything. "Excuse me," Karen said, voice tight, clipboard raised like a weapon. "You are in direct violation of HOA Moving Protocol Code 4.7, Vehicle Obstruction of Shared Residential Access Points, and Code 9.2, Unauthorized Interference with Established Landscaping Features." The man looked at the trucks, looked at the rosebush, looked back at Karen. "Hi, I'm Marcus." "I don't care if you're the President of the United States," Karen said. "Move the trucks now." Marcus pulled out his phone, made a single call that lasted 4 seconds, and within 3 minutes all 3 trucks had repositioned with military precision. The rosebush was untouched, and a man in a black suit was handing Karen a folded check for $500, the exact amount of the HOA fine, before she had even written it. Karen stood there holding the check, feeling for the first time in 11 years like she had somehow lost an argument she hadn't even started. Within 48 hours, the neighborhood knew 3 things about Marcus Reed. First, he had paid cash for the house, not a mortgage, actual cash, wired in one transaction. Second, he had once been listed in the top 30 wealthiest people on the planet because he, as he told one journalist, rankings are for people who need to be reminded they're winning. Third, and most importantly to Karen, he had already received 4 HOA violation notices and responded to each one with a politely worded note and a check for the exact fine amount delivered within the hour. He wasn't fighting the rules, he wasn't ignoring them, he was paying for the right to break them, and somehow that felt more dangerous than anything Karen had ever encountered in her 11 years of HOA presidency. The neighborhood had opinions, naturally. Dave and Sandra from number 8 thought it was hilarious. Old Mr. Patterson from number 3 thought it was disrespectful. Diane Reeves from number 14 thought Marcus was charming and brought him a welcome casserole, which he accepted graciously and apparently shared with his entire staff of 12. The staff of 12 was another thing. Marcus Reed had moved into a 4-bedroom suburban house with a personal assistant, a chef, 2 security personnel, a landscaper, a technology consultant, and 6 other people whose roles nobody could quite identify. Karen added unauthorized commercial activity in a residential zone to her mental list of violations and went home to update her clipboard. What she didn't know yet, what none of them knew, was that Marcus Reed had not moved to Maplewood Estates by accident. He had chosen it, specifically. He had looked at 17 neighborhoods across the state before selecting this one, and the reason he selected it had everything to do with Karen Mitchell and the way she ran the HOA with the absolute confidence of someone who had never once in their life been told no by someone who actually had the power to mean it. Marcus had grown up in a neighborhood exactly like this one, ruled by someone exactly like Karen, and when he was 9 years old, that HOA president had gotten his family's car towed from their own driveway because his father had parked it 6 inches outside the designated spot while carrying in groceries. His father had paid the fine in coins because that's all they had. Marcus had never forgotten the look on that man's face, not angry, just tired, and he had never forgotten the feeling of powerlessness that came from rules enforced not for the good of the community, but for the satisfaction of the person holding the clipboard. He wasn't here to destroy Karen Mitchell. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here because someone had told him that the only way to change a broken system was to go inside it, and Marcus Reed had spent 20 years getting very, very good at going inside things and rearranging the furniture while everyone else was still arguing about the welcome mat. By the end of his 3rd week in Maplewood Estates, Marcus Reed received 11 HOA violations and paid every single fine within 60 minutes of receipt, a pattern so consistent and so unnervingly calm that Karen Mitchell started waking up at 3 a.m. with the specific anxiety of someone who suspects they are being outplayed but cannot yet identify the game. The violations were real, she wasn't fabricating them, but there was something deeply unsettling about a man who responded to each notice like it was a minor inconvenience rather than the social and legal weapon it was designed to be. She had fined him for his outdoor lighting being 4% brighter than the HOA-approved lumens limit. He paid within 40 minutes and upgraded his lights anyway, just to a slightly different model that was technically compliant but somehow looked even more expensive. She had fined him for his landscaping featuring a non-approved species of ornamental grass. He paid, then hired a botanist who submitted a 14-page reclassification document to the HOA, proving that the grass was in fact a variant of the approved species, making Karen's original notice technically incorrect, a fact Marcus never mentioned, never weaponized, just quietly filed away. She had fined him for hosting more than 8 guests on a weekday evening, which violated HOA Social Gathering Code 11.4. He paid, then the following week submitted a formal request to amend Code 11.4, citing 3 legal precedents and a community survey he had somehow conducted among 42 of Maplewood's 61 residents in under 48 hours. The survey showed that 78% of residents found Code 11.4 unnecessarily restrictive and wanted it revised. Karen stared at that survey for a long time. The HOA board met the last Thursday of every month in the community center, a beige building with fluorescent lights and plastic chairs that Karen had always privately thought of as her court. She ran those meetings with an agenda, a timer, and a level of procedural precision that had, over 11 years, completely eliminated the kind of messy, open discussion that led to things like dissent and change. When Marcus Reed walked into the October meeting and sat in the second row, Karen felt the entire room shift in a way she couldn't physically explain, but absolutely felt. He hadn't announced he was coming. He wasn't on the agenda. He sat quietly, listened to 40 minutes of budget discussion and fence height disputes, and then, during the open floor period, he stood up and spoke for exactly 4 minutes. He didn't attack Karen. He didn't complain about his fines. He talked about the community, about what Maplewood Estates could be, about a community pool that the HOA had approved in principle 7 years ago and never funded, about the entrance lighting that 3 residents had formally requested for safety reasons and been denied twice on budget grounds, about the empty lot on Birchwood that had been an eyesore for 5 years because the HOA couldn't agree on what to do with it. He talked about these things with the specificity of someone who had done serious research and the warmth of someone who genuinely cared. And when he sat down, the room was quiet in a way that Karen recognized with cold clarity as the quiet of people who have just heard someone say out loud the things they had been thinking privately. After the meeting, in the parking lot, Dave from number 8